I never thought I'd find myself driving through Alaska in the dead of winter, but here I am. The road stretched out before me, a never-ending ribbon of snow and ice. I was just another trucker hauling freight, on a routine trip through the wilderness, or so I thought. It was late at night when the storm hit. The kind of storm you don't get in most places. The wind picked up, howling like some primal beast, and the temperature dropped so fast I could feel the chill creeping through my gloves. I could barely see the headlights anymore. The snow was falling in sheets, thick as fog, and it was like driving through a wall of white. I thought about pulling over, but there was nothing for miles. No towns, no signs of life. The GPS wasn't much help either, just a big blank spot on the screen where the roads used to be. I had no choice but to keep going, trusting that somehow I'd make it through. That's when I saw it. A light in the distance. Faint at first, barely noticeable, but it grew brighter as I got closer. A cabin, or at least, that's what I thought it was. The warmth of its light felt like an oasis in this frozen hellscape. I wasn't sure who lived out here, but the storm wasn't letting up. I figured I'd stop, get some rest, and wait it out. No harm in that, right? I pulled the truck over, letting the engine idle as I got out, the cold biting at my skin instantly. The door of the cabin creaked open as I approached. A man stood in the doorway, tall and thin, his face obscured by the shadow. He seemed to appear out of nowhere, his movements unnervingly smooth, like he knew exactly where I'd be. "Come on in," he said, his voice low but warm, almost too warm for a stranger in the middle of nowhere. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The fire crackling in the hearth made the place feel oddly inviting. The air smelled of pine and something else, something metallic, but I couldn't place it. I took a seat by the fire, trying to ignore the unease building up in my chest. The man didn't say much at first. He just sat across from me, watching me with eyes that seemed to pierce right through me. "You're not from around here, are you?" he finally asked. "No," I said, my voice betraying the tension I felt. "I'm just passing through." "Well, you're lucky you found this place," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Most people don't make it through these storms." There was something about the way he said it, too casual, like he'd said it before. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but the storm outside raged harder, and the warmth of the fire made it easy to forget. But then, as I sat there, I heard it. A distant thump, like something heavy hitting the floor above us. My heart skipped a beat, but the man didn't seem to notice. "Don't worry about that," he said, almost as if he'd read my mind. "It's just the house settling." But I didn't believe him. There was something in his tone, something in his eyes, that didn't sit right. And that thumping sound, it wasn't the house settling. It was something else. Something alive. My mind raced, my pulse quickened. I tried to calm myself, but the feeling of dread grew stronger, choking me in that dimly lit room. I wanted to leave, but the storm outside was so fierce now that I couldn't see a thing beyond the window. I was trapped. And that's when I noticed it. The strange shape in the corner of the room, partially obscured by the shadows. A large, bulky form, but it wasn't a chair or a piece of furniture. It moved. Just slightly, but enough for me to see. My breath caught in my throat. The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a knowing smile, as if he'd been waiting for me to notice. "Don't worry," he said, his voice chillingly calm. "You'll get used to it." I should have left. I should have run. But something told me it was already too late. I should have left when I had the chance. But the storm outside had become a roaring monster, a relentless beast that gnawed at the windows. The snow piled up in thick drifts, and the wind screamed like it was alive, trying to claw its way inside. I knew I was trapped, but something in me, a mixture of curiosity and fear, kept me seated, watching the man across from me. The shape in the corner of the room hadn't moved again, but the longer I stared at it, the more it seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. It wasn't just a silhouette, but something more, something that defied logic. I tried to focus on the man's face, on anything else that might distract me from that thing in the corner, but his smile only deepened, almost knowing, like he could sense my growing unease. "You're a long way from home," the man said, breaking the silence. His voice was smooth, almost hypnotic, but something in it made my spine tingle with dread. "What's a trucker doing out here in this kind of storm?" I had a load to deliver," I said, my words coming out more shaken than I wanted. "But the storm hit. I wasn't expecting it to get this bad." The man nodded, as though this was something he'd seen before. "You're lucky to have found me," he said, his voice growing quieter. "Most people don't. They drive right past, thinking they'll make it through the storm. But it's different out here. The road, it doesn't always lead to where you think it does." I didn't understand what he meant, but I wasn't sure I wanted to. The more I looked around the room, the more it felt like the walls were closing in. The flickering firelight made the shadows dance, twisting into shapes that seemed far too real. Then I heard it again, another thump. This time it was louder, unmistakably close. The man didn't react. He just sat there, watching me with that same unsettling grin. The sound came from above, but it didn't sound like footsteps. It was something heavier, something dragging, slowly. It seemed to get closer with each passing moment. I stood up, my legs shaky beneath me. I wasn't sure what I was expecting to find, but my body was telling me to get out of there. I took a step toward the door, but just as I reached for the handle, the man stood up too. His movements were deliberate, almost unnervingly slow, like he was savoring the moment. "You really think you're getting out of here?" His voice had dropped to a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife. I froze. There was no doubt in my mind that something was very wrong. The thumping from above had stopped, and in the stillness, I could hear something else. A soft rustling, like a breath, or maybe a whisper, coming from the walls themselves. The air in the room grew colder, and I swear I could feel eyes on me from all directions, though there was no one else in the room. "I've been waiting for you," the man said, stepping closer. "You'll stay here, like the others. They always stay." I turned to run, my heart pounding in my chest, but as soon as I reached the door, I felt it, a sudden weight pressing down on my chest, a force that held me in place. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Panic surged through me, but my legs refused to obey. It was as if the house itself had trapped me. From the corner of my eye, I saw it. The thing. The shape in the corner had shifted, and now it was standing, lurking, in the shadows, its eyes gleaming in the dim light. There were no features, just a dark, shifting mass that seemed to stretch and fold in on itself, moving like a liquid shadow. But the eyes, those were real. Too real. I could hear it now, the sound of something wet, something heavy slapping against the floor, dragging itself closer. I couldn't bring myself to turn and face it, but I felt its presence, closing in on me. The room seemed to spin as I struggled against the invisible force holding me still. The man's voice cut through the chaos. "You're not the first. And you won't be the last." The cold, metallic taste of fear filled my mouth as I realized what he meant. Those thumps above, the dragging sound, it was the other people. The ones who had come before me, who had been trapped in this hellhole. I wasn't leaving. Not now, not ever. But I had to try. I had to survive. I don't know how I found the strength to move, but I did. The force that had held me in place seemed to loosen for just a second, enough to allow me to stumble toward the door. My heart was hammering so loudly in my chest that I was sure the man could hear it. I gripped the door handle, my fingers numb from both the cold and the terror coursing through me, and yanked it open. The storm outside was a blur of white, the wind howling with an intensity that seemed almost alive. But even the violent gusts couldn't drown out the noise from inside the cabin. The dragging sound was louder now, unmistakable, and it was coming closer. Too close. I stepped outside, and for the first time, the cold was a relief. It bit at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the suffocating air inside. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see the man in the doorway, maybe even chasing me. But there was nothing. Just the light from the cabin, casting a faint glow against the swirling snow. I didn't stop to think. I just ran. I had no idea where the road was, or if I'd even find it again. The storm had reduced visibility to almost nothing, and I could barely make out anything more than a few feet ahead. The air felt like it was trying to choke me, each breath a struggle. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't risk going back to that place. As I ran, I started hearing it again, faint, but unmistakable, the sound of dragging. The thing inside the cabin was following me. I pushed harder, my boots slipping in the deep snow, but my legs felt like lead. The wind cut through my jacket, and I could feel the icy sting of the snow against my face, but I didn't dare slow down. I had to get away. But that sound, it was getting louder, closer. I could hear the scrape of something heavy, wet, like a broken animal dragging itself through the snow. And then, for just a moment, I thought I heard a voice. A whisper, barely audible, carried on the wind. "Don't look back." It wasn't the man's voice. It was softer, older, almost like a woman's, but the words sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I ran for what felt like hours, though I knew it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. The cold was starting to numb my limbs, my breath coming in desperate gasps. I didn't know how much further I could go, but I couldn't stop. The thought of going back to that cabin, of facing whatever was behind me, was too much. And then, just as I was about to collapse, I saw it. A faint light, so faint I thought I might be hallucinating, but it was there, flickering in the distance. A house. A real house, not the eerie, isolated cabin. I stumbled toward it, every step feeling like an eternity, until I reached the door. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. I just threw it open and stumbled inside. The warmth hit me like a wave. I gasped, my breath clouding in the air, but I didn't care. I was inside. I was safe. Or so I thought. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that made my skin crawl. I looked around, trying to make sense of where I was, but everything seemed off. The furniture was old, but neatly arranged. It looked lived in, but there was no sign of anyone. That's when I heard the voice again. "You're safe now, but they'll come for you." I turned around so fast I almost tripped. But there was no one there. The house was empty, or so it seemed. But the voice, soft and low, echoed in my mind. It wasn't a warning, it was a promise. I didn't have time to think about it. I bolted for the door, but when I reached it, I stopped dead in my tracks. The outside was dark. No storm. No snow. Just an endless stretch of barren land, as if I had never left the cabin. My heart sank as the realization hit me. I hadn't escaped. The thing from the cabin, the thing that had been dragging itself behind me, it was here, just beyond the door. I backed away slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The door slammed shut on its own, locking me inside. And that's when I saw it. A shadow, moving just outside the window. A figure, tall and unnervingly thin, standing perfectly still. The man from the cabin. But he wasn't alone. There were others with him. I could see their eyes, glowing faintly in the darkness, and for a moment, I thought they were watching me, waiting for me to make a move. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I was trapped. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening, but nothing added up. The house I'd found myself in, the empty feeling that clung to every corner, it all felt wrong. It was as if I was caught between two realities, two places, and neither one offered any safety. The shadow outside the window shifted, and my pulse quickened. I could feel its presence. The eyes, glowing faintly, followed my every movement. I backed away from the window, but every inch I moved seemed to draw the shadows closer, like they were closing in on me from all sides. I couldn't breathe. The walls of the house felt like they were pressing in, and the silence was deafening. There was no sound, no wind, no storm. Just the eerie stillness, the sense that something was waiting for me, something that had been waiting for a long time. I turned around, looking for an escape, but there was nothing. No other door, no windows that led anywhere but into the dark wilderness outside. The only thing in this place was the creeping sense of dread that weighed on my chest. "They'll come for you." The voice echoed in my mind again, and I froze. It was the same voice from before, soft but insistent, like a whisper in the back of my skull. But this time, I wasn't sure where it was coming from. It wasn't just in my head anymore, it was in the room with me, swirling around like smoke. I backed up toward the far wall, trying to steady my breathing, but it was useless. My heart was pounding in my chest, too loud, too fast. The cold sweat on my skin chilled me to the bone, and every part of me screamed that I needed to get out, now. But there was no way out. That's when I saw it. The door that I had just closed, the one I thought had locked behind me, was slowly opening. Not by itself, but by some unseen force. The door creaked as it swung inward, and I could hear the faint shuffle of footsteps outside. I didn't have to see the man to know he was there. I could feel him, feel them, just beyond the door. Their presence hung in the air like a dark cloud, suffocating everything it touched. The others. The ones that had come before me. The ones who had never left. The footsteps stopped. For a long moment, there was only silence. No wind, no storm, no sounds of life. Just an oppressive stillness that felt like it was crushing me from all sides. I knew they were waiting. Waiting for me to do something, anything, that would give them a reason to step inside. But I didn't move. I couldn't. And then, just as quickly as it had opened, the door slammed shut again. The sound echoed through the house, shaking the walls, rattling my bones. The silence that followed was even worse, the weight of it pressing in on me like the walls themselves were closing in. I heard the voice again, but this time, it was closer. It was right behind me. "You can't escape. None of you ever do." I spun around, but there was no one there. Nothing but the cold, empty space of the house. The shadows seemed to stretch, growing longer, darker, wrapping around me like a noose. And then I saw it. A figure, standing in the corner of the room, half hidden by the shadows. It was tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed to bend and twist unnaturally. Its eyes were glowing faintly, just like the ones I'd seen outside. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't just one man. It was something more. Something ancient. A presence that had been there long before I had arrived, and would remain long after I was gone. The thing in the corner moved, its limbs jerking in sickening ways. I could hear it dragging itself toward me, the wet scrape of its body against the floor sending a chill through my bones. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, and I knew in my gut that there was no way out. No escape from this nightmare. The figure came closer, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. It didn't have a face, not really. Just an empty void where eyes should be, a darkness that seemed to swallow everything it touched. But I could feel it watching me, studying me. And then, it spoke. "You're just like the others. Just another soul to add to the collection." I backed away, my heart racing, but there was nowhere to go. I had no strength left to fight. The thing reached out, its long fingers stretching toward me like claws, and I knew this was it. I was going to become a part of this place. Another trapped soul, just like the ones before me. And then, just as its fingers brushed against my skin, everything went black. I don't know how much time passed before I woke up. When I opened my eyes, everything was pitch dark, absolute blackness. For a moment, I thought I was dead, caught in some twisted nightmare that had no end. But then I heard something. A faint sound, like breathing. Ragged and shallow, but real. I shot upright, my heart slamming against my chest. The cold hit me like a wave, but it wasn't the same cold as the outside storm. It was deeper, an unnatural chill that seemed to seep into my bones and freeze them from the inside out. I reached out, my hands shaking as I tried to orient myself. The walls felt too close. I was cramped, confined, as if the room I was in had somehow shrunk around me. I ran my fingers across the surface, trying to find something, anything, that would tell me where I was. My fingertips brushed something rough and metallic, and I gasped. It was a door. I scrambled to my feet, panic surging through me. I fumbled for the handle, my breath coming faster now, as I threw the door open. But when I stepped outside, I didn't find the storm. I didn't find the house. I was back in the cabin. The same damn cabin. The one I had thought I'd escaped from. The same one I had stumbled into that first night, thinking I had found a safe haven. But now it was different. The air was thick with the smell of decay, of rot. The fire in the hearth was dead, leaving only cold ashes behind. The walls were stained, streaked with something I couldn't identify. And there, standing in the corner, was the same figure. The one with glowing eyes. But it wasn't just standing there now. It was watching me, its head tilted to one side, as if it was, waiting. For what, I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing, this wasn't just some figment of my imagination. It was real. And it had been here longer than I had. I backed away, trying to make sense of what was happening, but the more I looked around, the more everything blurred together. The door I had opened before, the one I thought had led me to safety, it was gone now, replaced by the same wall I had seen earlier. The windows were covered in frost, and I couldn't see outside anymore. Then, I heard it again. The dragging sound. It came from behind me, the unmistakable scrape of something heavy being dragged across the floor. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat, but there was nothing there. Nothing but the shadows. But I knew it wasn't nothing. I could feel them, watching me, always watching, from the edges of my vision, from the corners of the room. I tried to step forward, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. My knees buckled, and I fell to the floor, my mind struggling to hold on to any shred of reality. The voice came again, soft and low. You shouldn't have come here. You never should have come here. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to drown out the sound, but it was impossible. The voice was inside me now, a part of my own thoughts, a twisted echo of everything I had feared. And then, the thing in the corner moved. Slowly at first, its limbs bending and stretching in ways that were inhuman. It dragged itself forward, its body a mass of shadow and twisting limbs. Its eyes gleamed brighter now, brighter than before, and as it got closer, I could feel its cold, suffocating presence wrapping around me like a vice. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. It was as if the cabin itself had sealed me in, trapping me in this nightmare with whatever it was that had been waiting for me. The figure stopped just in front of me, its eyes staring into mine. I could feel my heart racing, my breath coming in short gasps. The thing reached out, its long, twisted fingers grazing the air just inches from my face. I couldn't look away. I couldn't do anything except sit there, paralyzed by the terror that seemed to seep into my soul. You're one of us now. The words weren't spoken aloud. They were felt. They vibrated in my mind, thrumming through every part of me. The truth that had been building all along. That I wasn't just a visitor here. I had become a part of this place, a part of the darkness that haunted it. I was never leaving. The shadow reached forward, and everything went dark. I woke again, but this time, I wasn't in the cabin. I wasn't anywhere familiar. The air was still cold, but it felt different, heavier. As I tried to stand, I noticed the darkness surrounding me wasn't the same as before. It was a deep, empty void. There were no walls. No floor. Just an endless, oppressive blackness. And then I heard them. The whispers. The voices of the others. The ones who had come before me. You'll never leave. We're all trapped here. Join us. We're waiting for you. I didn't know if they were real or if it was all just in my head, but I couldn't escape them. The darkness, the cold, the voices, they were a part of me now. I was part of them. I had joined the others. We were all waiting, for the next one to come. I don't know how long it's been. Time doesn't seem to matter here anymore. The void I'm in doesn't follow the rules of the world I once knew. The seconds and minutes bleed together, stretching endlessly. I've stopped counting. But I know one thing for sure, I'm not alone. The voices are always there now, filling the space around me like a thick fog. They whisper in tones that range from comforting to threatening, though their meanings blur together in this dark expanse. They call to me, urging me to join them, to accept the inevitable. It's your turn now. You'll stay forever, like the others. We all stay. I can feel them, moving around me, their cold, unrelenting presence pressing against my skin. I no longer try to fight it. There's no point. The fear is gone, replaced by a suffocating sense of inevitability. There's nothing left to do except wait for whatever comes next. Every now and then, I think I can hear something, footsteps, dragging across the floor. But when I turn to look, there's nothing there. Just the endless black. But I know what it is. I know what's waiting. It's the same thing that had been in the cabin with me, the same thing that had followed me into the house, the same thing that had reached out to claim me. The thing that wears shadows like a cloak, its eyes always gleaming in the darkness. I try not to think about it, but it's impossible. It's always there, just beyond the edges of my vision. It's watching me, always watching. I'm not sure how much longer I can endure this. The whispers never stop. I'm surrounded by them, suffocated by them. They come from every direction, filling the silence, making it worse than the storm outside ever could. You'll never escape.